Hello, hello. Thank you so much today for joining our podcast here at FYTM Network. This is Sean Speaks, and I have a fantastic guest here today. She is a fellow attorney, as I am, and I met her several years ago when I joined a family law group here in Houston, and we have we've been cool. We've helped each other out when we needed some type of coverage. She knows I'm always here for an ear if she has a question, and she's always there for me if I have a question. And her name is Shelly Davis, attorney, Esquire Shelly M. Davis, and she owns her own law firm, the Davis Law Firm. She has been in practice for herself for 15 years. She graduated law school, I believe, in 2005. She sits on some ancillary committees for the Houston Bar Association, and she's on the board of the Houston Lawyers Association. And she also is on the board of Her Voice, which I definitely want to get into talking about that. This lady is busy. She is doing things. She is making it happen. And I am so glad that she's taken out some time to come join us on our podcast and share her knowledge and her experience as a lawyer. And we probably talk about a little bit of everything. So welcome, Shelly, to the FYTM Network, to our podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you, Sean, for the opportunity to participate in your podcast.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Now, Shelly, let's just dive right into it. Okay, so you've been practicing for 15 years. Now, what are some of the practice areas that you practice in?
So we do primarily family law. We handle divorce matters, custody matters, modifications if necessary, enforcement matters, typically anything associated with the family law courts. Okay. In addition to that, we have been building a bankruptcy practice for the last couple of years. It's starting to develop now far as docket-wise and the ability of us being able to provide exceptional service to our clients. We also handle probate matters, which deal with estates of decedents and guardianships of individuals who are determined to be mentally incapacitated. And on a minor basis, we have a small group that actually does personal injury here in the office for us as well.
Okay. Wow. Okay. So you are definitely super busy.
Always.
And so now our practice areas kind of overlap a lot, right? Because we both do bankruptcy, we both do family law. And we do a couple of the other things that you had on your list. However, we don't see ourselves as competitors, do we?
No, I don't see you as a competitor. Not negatively.
That's what I'm saying. Not in a way. Yeah, we're cohorts in the business of practicing law as two female attorneys in Houston, and we help each other when we need help, and we're building our practice to wherever heights that we're wanting to go.
I agree.
I
said I agree.
Absolutely. And so one of the things, I know we've had like many talks over some wine at some of our Houston family law meetings. One of the things I wanted to talk with you about is I want to talk about a little bit of divorce, because I know that you do a lot of divorce, but I also want to kind of delve into custody issues between parents after the divorce. And I kind of want to see what you see, right? I think my audience kind of know my view on divorce, and I think marriage and divorce are legal processes. One just creates something, one dissolves something. But I think that you wrote a blog for me, which I am in love with. You said something in there that I thought was impactful. You said that divorce is a death. And one of the things that I read, that it made me realize that maybe I may have been a little insensitive when not that I'm intentionally being insensitive, right? That's not an intent, because I'm just being blunt about it. But it made me become aware that maybe I was being a little bit insensitive when I say it's just a legal process, although that's true and I stand by that. However, the emotional impact of a divorce, I think that is something that your blog helped me to see, that divorce is a death. And let's talk about that. What do you mean when you say that divorce is a death? What is that?
I mean it same as a physical death. It's a loss. It's a
Okay.
loss. We have loss. You may not physically lost somebody, but I go into our expectations, our dreams, our promises, our vows that we had at the altar. All of that is gone. And not only is it gone, it affects the people that are closest to us and the people that we love the most. And the most tremendous thing about a divorce is we just can't control it to a certain extent. Once the process has ultimately commenced, far as getting through the entire process and ultimately healing and being able to move on at the end of the process. But to me, the divorce proceeding is truly a death. And when we can recognize that it is a death, that we are really burying a lot of our expectations, our
Mhm.
dreams, that we can go back and we can heal from that. The same way as we suffer loss and emotional strain from a loved one dying or even a close friend dying. Those are emotional standards that we have to give ourselves. We have to recognize the pain, number one. I
Mhm.
think that our society, on many occasions, you know, coin divorces as something just regular in nature, and it's not. And that is the reason why we suffer so much. I see people suffering after the divorce proceedings, or even so much through it, because they haven't truly accepted what it truly is, and actually accepted how it's truly going to affect them in the long run.
That, that is so impactful, that what you're saying, Shirley, because I think a lot of times we do, because divorce is so prevalent, right? I know
Hmm.
in my own practice, divorce, it dominates, right? If people are wanting to get divorced, and I think the same for you, divorce is prevalent, but the post-divorce issues, um, I think that what you're, the fact that people are not dealing with the emotions of the divorce, the relationship ending, and the expectation, and the family unit. How does that impact people in your experience as a lawyer? How are you seeing that impact people after the divorce is over? Let's say went to court, dissolved, the judge and signed the order of divorce, and now 6 months later, what are you seeing?
Okay, so when the judge signs the order, the legal proceeding is resolved. It's done. You are officially divorced. But what I see on both sides, from both spouses, is that there's still a lot of anger and resentment there,
Mm-hmm.
that has not been resolved. It hasn't been fleshed out between the couple. They haven't discussed, hey, well, I'm angry, I'm upset, and I think that this divorce proceeding is the best thing for us, but this is how we plan to move on for the benefit of our children, or
Mm-hmm.
for the benefit of ourselves. And there's no true closure there. Even though the court has signed the legal proceeding, to me, there's no true closure there, because we have all of these loose ends that haven't been resolved. And until we can recognize what loose ends we have and what we can resolve and move forward, it's going to be a constant, prevalent issues as to going back to court, spending more money. I always do a cost benefit analysis for my client. And I'll say, hey, you really want to spend thousands and thousands of dollars on bringing this proceeding, rather than just going back and, providing certain type of concessions to your spouse, or, just letting it go.
Yeah.
Why bring
We
everybody back through the court proceedings? And so many times I'm so shocked to say that, hey, you know what? They want to move forward. They want to move forward. We're ready to move forward. I want to do this. Okay.
So, and that's funny that you say that, because sometimes, I do the same thing. Like when I talk to a client, especially if a client come to me with something that I think that, okay, you could resolve this with a phone call, right? You could
Right.
resolve this just give him or her what it is that they want. It's not really that big of a deal. And I do find that sometimes people are so wanting to punish, right? That they would rather pay me
Mm-hmm.
for something that really, if I got both of them on the phone, I could probably resolve it in 5 minutes, but they just want to go to court. And I'm always telling people, okay, I think you can kind of come to a better resolution than you can get at court. I always kind of think that, right? But sometimes people are so emotional, right? And I guess, they're emotional because they haven't really dealt with the pain or the loss or the death of the marriage itself, right?
Right. Right.
Now, how I know how I am with my clients. I always tell my clients, I'm more of a counselor. I tell people all the time, I'm more, when it comes to my family law practice, I take on the role of a counselor, because a lot of times people really need to work through sort of the emotion, within the legal process. And it's a lot of times my clients will come around and they kind of eventually will understand and back down off of some things that I think are just kind of being extreme, or they being a little petty about. But what role do you find as an attorney? What role do you find yourself playing with regards to clients that come to you and they're wanting to do stuff to the other parent that you don't feel should be done, or that potentially could be harmful to the kids?
I think I'm with you as far as a counselor, more or less like a coach, and I hate to say like a life coach, like you need a life coach, someone to teach you how to live through your life, but not necessarily go through the life, but live through these proceedings. When I tell somebody you're going to spend $5,000 to do what now? Is it really worth it to spend $5,000, take time from work to go sit in court, and you still may or may not get the result that you want? Can't we put that money away for a college fund, for a summer vacation? Can we do something else for there? A lot of times when we go back to court, you really, biting your nose to spite your face at the end of the day. What are you doing? You're getting a result to hurt somebody, but it's costing you so much money to do that. And I think that what you said was so many times we use these proceedings as punishment. We use these kids as punishment through the system. And at the end of the day, I'll say if the kids want to spend an extra 3 or 4 hours with dad, what's the big deal?
What's the big deal?
What's the big deal? Why? Well, the order said that the kids are supposed to be back at 6. I understand that. And they are supposed to be back at 6 according to the order. Again, we have a finalization of a legal process that says the kids are supposed to be back at 6. But there is no finalization of your emotional process where you, as an individual, can't even provide concessions, can't even co-parent without this order. And that's the whole reason why the order is even established, because people cannot resolve their own anger and emotion to provide what's in the best interest of themselves or their children. And so we always go back to this order.
You always go back to this order instead of learning how to adjust to the new life, right? Being single, no longer married. You stay tied to your emotion of anger. And you're not seeing clearly something that you could resolve. Because sometimes I've had clients call, on a Friday night at 6:30. He isn't here yet, or she isn't here yet. It's like, okay, it's just 30 minutes. Have you called? Maybe they're running late. Maybe they're in traffic, right? Because they so want them to abide by the order. And I'm like, okay. So I always try to tell people, okay, go back to when you were actually happy with the person, right? There had to be some trust there, some connection there that, which is why you probably did marry or have a baby with the person. Do all of that leave, Shelly, when you get divorced? Or are people just blinded by the anger? What do you think, or what do you see in your practice?
What I always ask my clients when they come in, I'll say, is he a good husband? And the answers typically is no. And there's a slew of reasons. But then I'll say, well, is he a good father? And they'll say, oh yeah, he loves those kids. I know that without a doubt in my mind that he loves his children. And so, we have a bifurcated system in the family court. We have, the husband and spouse and property, and then we have custody, child support, and anything else dealing with the kids. And so we have a spouse that we know that loves his children. So if he loves his kids, then what is preventing you from the kids staying an extra 30 minutes or 40 minutes or an extra night if they're having a good time with dad? Because you know that he's going to do whatever in his power is necessary to provide for those children. So when you go back and you do a resolution and you resolve yourself, there's several things that you have from the other spouse. Number one, you have fear. To me, you have fear. Typically, it's the fear of the mother who fears that her children are going to love their father more than her. And I see that often with mothers with boys. Mothers who have boys are very strict on the timeline of the custody order. because they're afraid that their boys are going to grow up to be men and they're going to want to spend more time with their father and have that fatherly mentorship, have that fatherly figure in their lives. And so what they do is they try to limit and control as much as they possibly can to deter that. But it doesn't benefit the child. And you do that, number one, out of fear, your fear of losing your kids.
So
Okay,
that seems, I don't want to say the word selfish, but maybe it's short-sighted is probably the better word than selfish, right? It's short-sighted on the mother's part. If you're seeing that mostly mothers are doing this, why can't the child love both parents as if they were still together, but they're just now apart? Why is it that? Because I do find in my practice that men tend to be a little bit more understanding when it comes to how the child goes back and forth, right? A little bit more, I think a little bit more flexible. I may be giving them a little bit too much credit, but a little bit more flexible, whereas women tend to want to be like, it says 6 o'clock, I want to be here at 5:59, right? And then to add your layer of saying that you're seeing in your practice that women, when it comes to the boy child, are a lot more protective because they are afraid that the boy will grow up and want to spend more time with the man. So this is my thing. I am beginning to see sort of a slight trend a little bit of more children after they reach a certain age wanting to go from staying with the mother primarily to staying with the father primarily. Have you seen that? Is that a trend? And if so, what's causing that in your opinion?
I can't say that I've seen that necessarily I've seen instances where a child wants to stay with dad. The male child wants to stay with dad, but he's so afraid of hurting mom's feelings that he's just gonna suck it up and stay with mom. That he is so emotionally, I don't want to say attached to his mother, but so emotionally concerned for her emotional well-being that he can't fathom to see him break his mother's heart by telling her, hey, well, I want to live with dad now. And so based on that reason, I see a lot of children who may actually do better at dad's house, who may actually, dad may have a lot more opportunities, a lot more resources available, but who choose to stay with their mom because they have this integral aspect of their body that says that, hey, well, I just can't hurt my mom. And so then that goes back again to to us individually being able to resolve our emotions, because how we feel, whether we say it, whether we behave on it, our children can actually pull from that. They can pull that sense of our insecurities, our fears, and they understand that even with, because they spend so much time with us, even with us not expressly writing something down or expressly telling them something to their face, I think
they can feel so your sense is that they can feel our energies.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Okay.
Absolutely.
Well, tell me this then, Shelly. How do we as attorneys, as family members, as friends, how do we help people who are dealing with divorce or post-divorce? How do we help them heal so that we can lessen the emotional roller coaster? Because I do agree with you. I think that it hurts more of the children, right, who are going to eventually become adults and repeat the cycle, right? My whole thing about this podcast and FYTM network is to help us stop and to break cycles, right? To recognize when something's not working and make the adjustment, make a new plan, and go in a better direction. How do we first, as attorneys, how can we assist when we're in the divorce process with a client, help them to ensure that they at least try to deal with, one, the death, right? The death-like experience of divorce. And two, as you pointed out in your blog, the anger, because unlike just a regular death, right, of a loved one, you're also feeling an angry feeling, So how do we help, or what guidance can we give to our clients, to our friends, or to our family to help them to deal with not just the death, but the anger, which I think from what I've gathered from talking to you and reading your blog, that your thought is more that it's the anger too that's keeping people sort of on that cycle. Instead of healing post-divorce, they're still stuck in the cycle of divorce. What can we do?
Well, I think that, what I always suggest to my clients, especially with younger kids, because in my experience, younger kids, and I'm talking about children in elementary school, they have a real difficult time understanding what's going on. They don't understand why we're not living in the same house anymore. And what's happened is that mom hasn't said anything about a divorce or may have mentioned it in passing. Dad hasn't said anything about a divorce and may have mentioned it in passing. So I always recommend that both parties should really sit down and explain to the children how much they both love them, but that they're going to be living in two separate houses. But that mom is going to be around and dad is going to be around, and you're still going to see us, and we're still going to be at school programs together. And I think that that's very important, because the tension that a child feels when both parents are in a room and that child knows that both parents, could care less for each other or have said negative things about each other in the presence of the child, completely stresses the child out. It really stresses the child out when he knows that there's going to be some sort of confrontation, some sort of comment made, and it's immensely embarrassing to the child. I had a case several years ago where dad had remarried, and mom was not married, and they were at a school program. It was a choir program where the child was singing with his classes, with his students, with his classmates. And he ran off the stage because the anxiety of just mom, dad, and stepmom being in the same room was just overwhelming to him. So when he ran off the stage, mom followed him to try to calm him down. And then here comes dad screaming and yelling. And then here comes stepmom screaming and yelling on top of that. It becomes this huge fiasco. Police are called and ask parents to leave, and this child has to go back to this school in front of these teachers, these administrators, and his classmates again. And it's just not that fair for that child. It's not that serious for both parents. Somebody should have been the bigger person to step aside.
So somebody should have. Just to use this experience that you had with this particular client, was the problem that was one of them still in love with the other person or wanted the other person, or was it just that because the father had moved on, the mother could not accept that the father had moved on and remarried? What do you think was the
First of all, the couple was very young. They were very young when she got pregnant, and I mean like in the 20s. So she was going to school, and she was very angry at the fact that he didn't support her during the pregnancy. So she wrote many emails to him about how hungry she was, how she didn't have money to go to the doctor, and she was working on getting her degree, and she asked him for help, and he just basically ignored her. And then I don't think that in this case this was an issue of him moving on. I think that the bitterness came from her was that that he did nothing for her while she was pregnant with the child. And then
they were married when she was pregnant, right?
No, they weren't married.
Okay.
And so it took him a couple of months to get involved in the child's life. So she had to, she went to a couple of shelters, things of that nature that she had to live. And I think that was the source of her anger. And then the fact that he did nothing for the child while she was pregnant, and then it took him a couple of months to become involved in the child's life, and then he goes in and files a custody action with him and his new wife. I think that was the bitter portion for her that she could not necessarily get over. But what I will say is that she was not the instigator. She wasn't the instigator. No, I think that she always had her son's best interest at heart. She never refused access to the child. There was never an issue as to she didn't want the child going over there.
Who was the instigator? I'm just curious of being nosy now.
I think it was dad. I think that dad got married, and I think that he just thought that he was just bigger and better than mom, and he wanted that family unit. I think now that I think about it, I think his wife had issues getting pregnant, and
Gotcha.
so I think that there were some other underlying issues that he may have been suffering. But
Now, let's, you just made a point that I think that some people are dealing with too, where we're not talking about a divorce situation. We're just talking about now two people had either a relationship or whatever, but it resulted in them having a baby together,
right,
right? And either the father or the mother initiated some type of custody action, and one parent then either moves on via getting married or a new relationship. What are you seeing with regards to uh, the emotions of two people who did not have the divorce death, right? They didn't have a death of an actual divorce. They may have had an end of an actual relationship where, is it the same thing, right? Me and a person, two people are together and they've been together for, let's say, a year, and then they break up, but before they break up, they had a baby, or right when they broke up, she was pregnant. Um, what's the impact there? Is it the same emotion as a divorce death, or is it something different?
I don't know if it's the same emotion as a divorce step. I think that once you get married, officially married or married by common law, hold yourselves out to be married, it's a different standard of a relationship. There's a
Okay.
different expectation. There's just a different primer put on that type of relationship than someone who's basically together and oops, we got pregnant type of thing.
Okay.
I think that in the latter, without the marriage, where there's a child that is resulting from a relationship, there may have been certain expectations, but it wasn't primed and sealed with the vows and family and things of that
It
nature.
didn't
And
have the
so,
additional fluff to it.
right, right. Now, I
Okay.
mean, you still can suffer the same. I
Yeah.
still think that you're still angry to a certain point, and I think that all parents who are going through this type of issue, especially with children or even in a divorce matter, need to really invest into some family counseling.
I was
Um,
going to get to that. Should there be a requirement, you think, that all divorced couples go through some type of counseling? I know that I think in Harris County, they have to do some type of like parenting class, right? But I don't know, I don't think it's, well, depending on which court you're in, whether it's required or not. Um, but I think something, maybe, do you think something more than that though? Maybe something more personal, more of a therapy type, right? Um,
yeah,
would that
I do
help?
think so. I do think that
Okay.
it should be required, especially if you have younger children, on moving through and fleshing out the anger, the issues, could resolving the divorce.
Well, just let's take divorce out. Let's just talk. Like,
Okay.
we're talking now just about two people that just had they had a relationship and had a baby, and now they're in the courts fighting over custody.
Mhm.
So, do you think, in that sense, do you think we need to require counseling for two people who were not married? Um, what are your thoughts on
Yes,
that? Yes.
yes,
Okay. So you're
yes,
saying either way, counseling because there are kids involved, and you
right,
want to make sure that whatever anger and emotion, you're not allowing that to take the best of you.
right. Or, to impute that onto the children automatically. If you
Hmm.
guys decide not to be together, you want a divorce, the children should not suffer as a result of your decisions at the end
So,
of the day.
Shelley, have you ever heard of? There's a book called Conscious Uncoupling. Have you ever heard of that book?
No.
Well, in this book, the author basically kind of, talks about her personal experience when her and her husband got divorced, how they kind of sat down, they really talked about it prior to
Hmm.
initiating the divorce. And before even filing for divorce, they sort of uncoupled from each other in a way,
Right.
right? They
Hmm.
recognized the truth of where their relationship was at, and they backed out of it together so they can try their best to reduce anger, which is what you're saying, that emotional roller coaster some people find themselves on even post divorce. And I thought that it was kind of a cool way of kind of thinking about, okay, once you know that the relationship is over, whether you're married or whether you're just in a relationship, it doesn't have to necessarily end bitterly,
Right.
right? You know, but I think in order for it to not end bitterly, you have to at least become honest with yourself first. Always start with yourself first, and then honest with the other person by having a conversation. Do you think people are not having a conversation? It's just saying one day they be like, okay, I can't do this anymore, and then they're gone.
Yes, that's what they're doing.
That's what they're doing.
That's what they're doing. Or I've dealt with this for a certain number of years. He's not changing, and I'm going to go ahead and take the kids, and we're going to live here. And nobody does an evaluation to go back and say, hey, how does this decision that I'm about to make, how is this going to affect the people that I love the most, my children? How are they going to be emotionally established? Are they going to have to go to a brand new school, make brand new friends? No one goes through and does that full assessment. They're just angry, they're mad, and they just want this relationship over. They want this marriage over. And like I said, we can make it over through a legal process. But, you know, I got even friends who are attorneys who recently got a divorce, and now their children are in an emotional whirlwind.
Mm.
It is just so unfortunate, you know, because a lot of times at divorce we cannot go back and undo. But you have children who are already emotionally unstable, and then to make them and put them through this without, like you say, doing an intricate strategic backing out or intricate and strategic step on how we are going to leave this relationship, but still keep our family intact so that we both can be the best parents as possible for these kids.
Exactly. Exactly. Because I'm trying to tell people, say, you know, yeah, I get that you're emotional, and I get that you're ready to go run away, right? I said, but don't run and then you run right into a Mack truck, right? I always
Right.
tell people, I say you're running, right? And I can, you know, I have no problem. I would have no problem representing you, but I don't want you to run into a Mack truck, because at the end of the day, especially if you got kids, right?
Right.
That just because you get divorced, your relationship with the parent, the other parent, is gonna still be there, and you've got to deal with it, right? You've got to still deal with it. You got to still see this person. So wouldn't it be better if maybe you had a conversation about it? Now, I get it. If the other person doesn't want to have a conversation, you can't force it, right? So sometimes you just got to go for it. But, you know, I just thought that was a good, you know, a good concept of, you know, consciously just acknowledging that this is not working. And we don't have to hate each other, right? Because at the end of the day, we know we both love these children, right? And we know we
Right.
want the best for our children. How do we end us with not causing our children to be, you know, have emotional issues that they're not going to deal with for 20 or 30 years? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Because they're married. Because I think that's the cycle, right?
Right.
You know, kind of what
Right.
you were saying. You know, people get divorced. They don't deal with the depth of the divorce and how that's impacting them. They don't deal with the anger as a result of whatever the relationship was. Then they cause post-divorce. They go to this tug of war with the children as the pawn in between, right?
Right.
The children then have all of these emotional things, like your client's kid that was in on the stage and ran off. They then, you know, because people are resilient. We put it, you know, and we put it in our mind. We deal with it, or we don't deal with it. 15 years later, we find ourselves in a relationship, and boom, we're doing the same thing our parents did.
Right. Because we learn from our parents how to resolve conflict.
We learn from our parents how to resolve conflict. And if the
And
parents hadn't been resolving conflicts properly, then we are not going to resolve conflicts properly.
right.
And then we're
And
going
we
to perpetuate unhealthy, unhappy, unproductive, unfulfilling relationships over and over again.
absolutely.
Absolutely.
That's the first people we
Wow.
learn. That's the first people we learn from. We learn from our parents. We learn how to be angry, what to be angry about. We learn that. And if we don't learn to resolve our conflict, and a child can't, a child only has what he sees in the house. And so if this is how he sees what's going on, then that's how that child is going to resolve conflict moving forward, whether it be just walking away in his
Mm-hmm.
marriage, or leaving the house in his marriage, or even women, we have a tendency of shutting people out, not talking, not saying anything, and ultimately getting over something, and then 4 months later the same issue resolves and it comes back because we never sat down, we've never resolved the issue, even with ourselves. We've never even
Yeah.
asked ourselves, why am I so angry about this? why
Mm.
do i why do I keep getting so angry about this issue coming up over and over and over
Yeah.
again?
So we have to start with ourselves. And I totally agree with you on that, Shirley. I absolutely agree with you. I think that we start with ourselves, because I think a lot of times we're just not being honest with ourselves.
Right.
And, and then that just kind of spills over to the relationship. Then you got to protect your own dishonesty. Then you got to perpetuate that with the kids. And then you get in protective mode where he not taking my kid. It's like, okay, but you do realize that's his kid too.
Mhm.
Right? Sometimes I had a case a couple of years ago where it's kind of similar to you, where the kid was a boy, and he decided he wanted to live with his father. And so, of course, I always ask, well, did something happen at home? Was there a fight between you and, the mother? I'm asking the mother this. Was there a fight between you and the son? No, everything was good. This just came out the blue. How do you help a parent, especially a mother, because I think this affects mothers a little bit more than fathers, I think right now anyway, when the kid just out the blue want to live with the other parent? How do you help the parent that had primary possession for a good number of years? How do you help them to understand that the kid is not doing anything wrong by wanting to go stay with the father now?
Well, I try to coin it as a benefit to that parent, to that mother.
Okay.
So many times, mothers in our own natural state, we run the home. Okay, we are the king of the house, the queen of the house, and it is our job, even in the most primitive societies, to take care of our children and to take care of the home. And in recent years, we now have additional responsibilities on top of that. But I try to coin it as, a lot of times dads come by and they think this is so easy. It's so easy, coming home after working a full day, cooking, homework, washing clothes, getting clothes ready, getting kids ready, bathe, going back, in this constant routine that we have to do. And a lot of times dads think it's easy. And so what I try to tell my moms is that, hey, well, it's time to pass the baton. It's time for you to invest in you. And if your son wants to be with his father, we have to respect that as a young man. We have to respect that, and we still have to be the mother that he needs us to be. But if he wants to live with his father to be the man that he needs to be, this may be in his best interest for him to do that. But it may also be in your best interest for you to start thinking about yourself, and start investing into your potential that you have put on the back burner for the benefit of your kids. So that's how I try to coin it.
I like that. Yeah.
Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. I think that for women, it's just it's so detrimental to us, for to hear those type of words, to know that we've made this investment, and to know that we're mom. You're
Yeah.
supposed to want to stay with us until you reach the age of majority.
Yeah.
But the cycle of divorce and the prevalency of the divorce has changed that for us. And again, and it's okay. It's okay at the end of the day.
Gotcha. Now, before we conclude, I do want you to talk a little bit about Her Voice. In October, I believe it was, of last year, you invited me to a banquet. And I came out, and I didn't look up what Her Voice was before I came there. So I wasn't really sure exactly what I was kind of coming into. And then I think as I was walking in, and then it kind of hit me kind of what Her Voice is. I had an idea of what it was about, but I hadn't really researched it, right? And the program was amazing.
Thank you.
It was absolutely amazing. It was so, I was emotional. It was emotional, but it was informational And it was also transformational just to see some of the women and the stories that they had been through. It was just, it also touched me personally because I had a similar experience to some of the women that spoke. And I don't think I was ready. You know how you go somewhere and I wasn't ready for it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And it's like, okay, I wasn't really ready for what I was hearing, but I needed to hear it. I needed to have that experience. And so can you tell us something about Her Voice, who started Her Voice, and just kind of give us some information on that?
Her Voice was started by Shana Lewis, and she was a PhD student at Sam Houston State University, and she participated in a grant program. Okay, and she wrote out a program on what she wanted to do for a nonprofit, and she won. She won $25,000 for the initiation of her nonprofit. And her nonprofit focused on domestic violence against women. And she said that in her studies for counseling, that she discovered that that these women who were being physically abused, mentally, but also physically abused by their lovers, by their spouse, would come into her office, seek counseling, and then they would make out a plan on what they would do to leave the relationship. And then 2 days later, the women would call her back and say, hey, I'm going to go back and work it out. And so she didn't understand why was it, or what was mentally going on with the women that were being physically abused, on why they wanted to go back to their abuser. What was the conscientious step in going back? And in her research, she discovered that an abused woman will go back to her abuser at least 7 times. At least seven times before she makes a decision to truly and finally leave him. Okay. And what happens is that within that 7 times, she's of course going to be physically abused again, because again, no one's addressing the issues in the relationship. But what we fear is that some women don't make it to that 7th time. And so some women are ultimately killed when they go back to their abuser rather than leaving. And then it's detrimental to their children who may witness it or was in the house, or the children may also be harmed as well. And so what Her Voice actually does is that we pair up individuals who are mentees, and those are women who are currently in physically abusive relationships that have not left yet.
They're still there.
That are still there.
Wow.
That are still there. Okay. And we pair them up with a mentor, a woman who has suffered the same type of physical abuse but has left. Okay, has left and has moved on. And so we pair those mentorships up in an effort to reduce the number of times that the physically abused woman would ultimately go back to her abuser. So that's what the focus is on Her Voice. Her Voice is a mentorship program for the abused woman to be mentored by someone who has been abused, but who has ultimately left the relationship. And we provide tools and resources in having the mentors teach the mentees what needs to be done, and how to officially leave the relationship, resolve feelings, resolve, mental guilt and anguish, things of that nature that may be making them go back. And so that's what she does. That's what the organization does.
Wow. If there's anyone that's watching or listening that would like to contribute or to assist Her Voice, can you provide us with any contact information so that we can reach out?
Sure. You can reach Her Voice at our website at www.her-voice.net. N-E-T. And all of our information is on the website. If you want to email the CEO and founder of Her Voice, it's again Shana Lewis, and her email address is slewis@her-voice.net. And she'll be more than happy to assist you in any manner that we possibly can.
Wow. I think that was that's an awesome nonprofit, and I think many women definitely find themselves in abusive relationships and they're unable to get out. I know personally I've had that experience in my past, and And you're right, you do keep going back. You know, I didn't know the number was 7 times, but now if I go back and count, I may have closely went back 7 times, you know, before I was willing to just kind of say, okay, enough is enough. And definitely would have been, you know, helpful if something like Her Voice was around back then. So shout out to Shayna Lewis for stepping up in that way, and shout out to you for being a board member and just being open and available to helping people who are dealing with emotional issues from abusive relationships, whether it be physical abuse or mental abuse or even emotional abuse.
Mhm.
So I clap to you on that, and to Her Voice.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
You wrote a blog for us.
I did.
And I'm just so excited. Anytime anybody writes a blog for, you know, for Free Your Thinking Minds, for a blog post, I'm just excited about it, because I think writing is so powerful. It's therapeutic. And I think sometimes you need to get something out, and you don't even know you need to get it out until you write it down. And then you write it down and read it back, you're like, wow, so powerful, that you can make connections that you may not have made necessarily or been aware of, that you were even making in your head, that you make on paper. And so I'm very thankful for a fellow attorney, super busy, to take out your time, first of all, and come on this platform and be supportive. I just want to say I appreciate you for that. And I thank you. Now, can you please also provide people with your information with regards to your law firm, where you're located at, and a phone number?
Sure. The Davis Law Firm, I'm the managing attorney here, founder of the firm. We're located in the Greenway Plaza area off Richmond. Our physical address is 3100 Richmond, Suite 480, Houston, Texas, 77098. Houston, Texas, 77098. You can reach us by telephone at 713-349-9299. And all of our email and contact information is also on our website at www.davis-smith-law, SMITHLAW.com.
Perfect. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Let's get into reading the blog. So I'm going to turn it over to you and go for it.
Okay. My blog is titled Divorce is a Death. And the affirmation is, I can heal from a heartbreak. Divorce is a death of expectation, a death of dreams, a death of family, a death of the family unit. Divorce severs the relationship between the spouses, children, mutual friends, and in-laws. Over time, spouses develop interlineal relationship with each other's friends and families, and a divorce systematically destroys those relationships. To heal from a divorce, you must first comprehend its massive effect on your life and the lives of the people closest to you, especially your children. Oftentimes, I hear a client tell me that he or she will get over it, and that other people have told him that he or she will get over it, or that I don't need him or her. However, we would never dare to say such a thing or believe such a thing concerning the death of a family member or friend. This summer, my lovely grandmother died, and I didn't think that I was necessarily that close to my grandmother. I made regular visits to her, and she always made me a cake for my birthday when she was healthy. My grandmother had been an intricate part of my entire life, from spending summers and Christmases at her home, her presence at all of her children's and grandchildren's graduations, an occasional $5 gift when I was in college. When I graduated from law school, she was so proud. She published the details for my graduation with my picture in the local paper. And I couldn't understand why I was so inconsolable at her funeral. I never realized how much I loved her and how much more time I wanted to spend with her until it was too late. This is the same for a divorce. You have all of these emotions plus one more powerful emotion, and that's anger. Many are angry at the alleged root cause of the divorce. I say alleged because we tend to focus on the faults and deterioration of the marriage relationship on the other spouse. However, you oftentimes fail to do an evaluation of your own contributions to the deterioration of your marriage. And when the divorce is final, we have all the emotions associated with death plus anger. So how do we heal from a divorce death? How do we reconcile our emotions? First, we must understand and accept the nature of the divorce. A divorce is a death. You are no longer a family unit. The change relationship now requires changes that are new or like new to you. The first change is to accept that you are single. You must readjust your life to becoming single again. You must readjust your mind to a single mindset again. You must understand and accept that you may no longer be welcomed in the same circles of formal mutual friends and families of your spouses. This means you can no longer control the actions of your former spouse. You should no longer be concerned with your ex-spouse's dating habits, and if there are children involved, you can no longer supervise the action of your ex-spouse during his or her visitation period. As a single person, you can no longer depend on your ex-spouse financially, emotionally, or for physical support. Second, and most important, you must forgive your spouse. Forgive his or her selfish behavior, wrong behavior, and inactions. So many times after a divorce, you carry the nature of blame and fault for months and years. But at the end of a divorce, blame and fault becomes irrelevant. You must then focus on healing. You must release the anger and prevent it from infiltrating your lives again by the actions of your spouse. I.e., for example, he didn't pay child support or she didn't pay child support. They missed a visitation or they began dating a friend that's closer to you. Forgiveness allows you to focus on your potential for greatness. When we recognize the enormous loss resulting from a divorce, we can then begin to heal. Our affirmation, I can heal from a heartbreak.
Wow. I have to repeat this sentence here, or two sentences. You said, so many times after divorce, you carry the nature of blame and fault for months and years. But at the end of a divorce, blame and fault become irrelevant. You must then focus on healing.
That's it.
That is powerful, Shelley, because I think that's kind of sums up how you don't let the depth of the divorce keep you in the pain of the separation, right? Because if you focus on healing, you can create new expectations. You can create new hopes and new happiness for your life. And you won't stay stuck in the past. Because I think when you focus on the hurt, you stay stuck in the past. When you focus on the healing, you create your future.
Right. You recognize your potential for greatness.
You recognize your potential for greatness.
Yes.
Beautiful, Shelley.
Thank you.
My friend, my attorney friend. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate you. I appreciate you. I appreciate you. I appreciate you. I'm very grateful. Okay. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast presented to you by Free Your Thinking Mind. Happy Friday. Happy Friday. And I just want to say again, thank you, Shelley, for coming onto our platform and sharing your practice and sharing her voice. And Ashe, people, Ashe, free thinkers, may what you say manifest in your life today and every day. Happy Friday.
harsh, but I don't know how to get through to you.